Welcome back to the channel, my friends. So, I had an idea for a video in the middle of a conversation with one of my friends. He's not exactly... well, he's a fan of Game of Thrones, but he's not as big a fan as I am. So he started peppering me with random questions, and as I was answering them, I thought, shoot, this might make a good video. So, we're going to start at the top, obviously, for, let's call it safety concerns. Obviously, this isn't my main channel, but I do catch some hate on my main channel, so for his safety, we're going to blur out his name. I'm leaving the date and the time and his question, and we're going to take it from there. His question: what was with the White Walker weapons? How did they shatter normal steel? And that's going to be the first question. We're going to talk about that, and I'm going to answer it to the best of my ability. If you guys watched my short from the other day, I just threw it out there, was testing the waters for this series. So why did the steel break? Why did the iron break? Why did the bronze shatter? It's because the White Walkers, their weapons were unnaturally sharp and were, I don't know, blessed, cursed, however you look at it, with extreme magical cold. It's kind of like real world physics almost, where if extreme cold is extreme enough, metal gets brittle, metal breaks. Easy as that. This is a extreme case of that because extreme magical cold and it being a made-up TV show and book. But, we have a caveat, in my opinion. So, in the books, Waymar Royce, right at the very beginning, he was able to fight a White Walker for more than one hit. You saw at Hardhome, some of the swords, you got hit one time, and that was it. His sword, however, doesn't shatter immediately. It took several hits. It was hit repeatedly, and then the steel eventually shatters. So, this is the way I look at it. Obviously, there's different quality of steel. You guys have played XYZ RPG games. If you've played Diablo, any of them, you understand these things. Trying to Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord, which is my current game of choice. Weapons come in all qualities. The higher the quality, the more it is likely to sustain several hits before shattering, but it will shatter nonetheless. Hope that helps. Now to the next question. My friend's second question was another good one because he asked, how about the guy that can just light his sword on fire? Now, obviously, he was meaning Thoros of Myr, is what I thought. But, because I was extra lore-y that day, I gave him how Thoros of Myr lit his sword on fire, and how Beric Dondarrion lit his sword on fire. Obviously, Thoros of Myr, I actually typed in because I couldn't spell Thoros at the time, so I put, well, what's that drunk guy that lit his sword on fire? To get his name. Yes, Thoros of Myr. He used wildfire. Wildfire and cheap swords. It was a legit gimmick. It would intimidate the people he was fighting, scare off the horses, cause a commotion. Plus, how many people are running around the battlefield with a fucking flaming sword? Oh yeah, it was just Thoros of Myr. Now, I think George R.R. Martin said something about this in the books, about how that's not a good way to treat steel or something along those lines. Yeah, Thoros of Myr specifically used cheap swords because he was literally rubbing it with wildfire and lighting it on fire. So the swords would go pretty quick, which is why he kept buying cheap ones. Now, Beric's use of the flaming sword is a shit ton different. So Beric is often shown, like, I don't know, running his hand over the blade and sometimes praying. So it appears as it's a genuine power that he has rather than rubbing wildfire on it and lighting it on fire, that type of shit. So in my head, Thoros of Myr was a gimmick, and Beric may have actually used like his own blood and prayers to actually, like, in a fit of a miracle, lighting his hand or lighting his sword on fire. Which, if we're gonna go tit for tat here, I'm pretty sure everybody figured out it was wildfire. But imagine, hey, yeah, This guy over here is just running his hand over his sword and it's catching on fire. That's way more intimidating. Now, some clarification. And it's a solid clarification here. So later in the books, the Brotherhood becomes more tied to the Lord of Light. Beric does the thing. So maybe by the end, Thoros may have also tapped into the real faith-based power and not his original gimmick. I mean, he's bringing a dude back from the dead. So maybe he's just tapped in like that. Maybe he's finally in the Force. But yeah, that was the answer to my questions. And in true character for myself, I gave him way too much information. So this is kind of another question that he asked me that really deserved a simple response. And I somehow nuked it and gave him a super long answer. So, in the show, when the dragon allows him to touch him, is that because he's a Targaryen? Forgive my friend's spelling. How does fire bring one back to life? Also, wildfire is just Greek fire. Accurate on the last statement. So we're going to address the top one. And I'm assuming he is Jon Snow. Is it because he's a Targaryen? Yes. More than likely, yes. Just because the bond that dragons and the Targaryen bloodline have, more than likely, yes. Now, in the Game of Thrones universe, there are people who aren't Targaryens that are... How to word this? Non-Targaryens that were able to touch dragons, care for the dragons, handle the dragons, feed the dragons, interact with them, yada yada. It was the Dragon Keepers, or Dragon Pit Tenders, if you will. So in King's Landing... When dragons were actually in King's Landing, there were non-Targaryen handlers who, again, fed, cared for, interacted with the dragons in the pits every single day. They could touch them to some degree, but they were at high risk, and they didn't ride or fully bond with them, obviously. So I gave him that bit of information, even though that was overkill. The Night King technically touched a dragon, but it was a dead dragon, so that was more... ice magic necromancy and not a natural bond. But if you guys have watched some of my videos, there's always a theory about the Night King secretly being a Targaryen. So maybe that's why. So it's one of those things where the lore isn't exactly fleshed out when it comes to a ton of the universe. So the Night King thing is up in the air. But for the most part, yes, Jon Snow could touch the dragons because he was a Targaryen. So this is where I had to start letting my friend down, letting him down easy. In the show, that one-eyed guy dies in the Battle of Winterfell against the White Walkers. In the books, did Arya do the final blow? I had to let my man know. That shit hasn't happened yet. We're still waiting on George for that one. Waiting on you, George. What was the last book published in 2011, 2012? Still waiting, my guy. Still waiting. You put out that book before I even joined the military, and I've been out for damn near 10 years, my guy. Time to get on it. So, I let him down about the one-eyed guy. The one-eyed guy who actually keeps coming up in our conversation. So, good old Beric Dondarrion. He died for the last time, resurrecting Catelyn Stark, which, if he sees this video, you can ask me about her next. So, after the Red Wedding, the Brotherhood without banners finds her just... lifeless body in the river. She had been dead for like 3 days with her throat slit. We all saw that. Thoros, in his drunken wisdom, was just like, yeah, no, we're not going to bring her back. She gone. Beric decided, no, that ain't how we're going to do it. So instead, he gives up his life for hers, passes, I don't know, his remaining life to her body, and then he immediately falls dead after that. For his, I believe it was like the 6th or 7th death. And he stays dead. He's deader than a doornail. So yeah, that's what happened to Beric. He didn't even make it to the good part. He died, bringing back what is seemingly a crazy person, a crazy death zombie, hell-bent on revenge? Question mark. So yeah. And then in the books, did Arya do the final blow? Nah, that's... Well, my friend, if you ask me again when he finally finishes the series, I'll let you know. But as of right this second, nobody knows. Not even George. And this is where I had to end the questioning for the night, because you clearly see it's 11:23 at night when he asked me this, and it was another sad one where I had to let him down. Killing the Night King and Bran becoming king? Is that not canon? No. It turns out, no, not at all. So, as you guys know, or you know now, the Night King doesn't exist in the books. So I understand that the writers for the Game of Thrones show for HBO, you're going to want a bad guy. You can't have a group of people being bad and not have one guy to pin it on. So in my head, they created the Night King to be like, this is the bad guy. This is the guy who you hate. All your disdain goes to that guy. So there are the others, which is the book name for the White Walkers. They're extremely dangerous. They've only appeared a few times. But yeah, there is a character called the Night's King, which is one of those like legendary ancient figures from thousands and thousands of years ago that may or may not exist. Yada yada. So according to the legend, he married a woman who was white as the moon and had eyes like blue stars. Who does that sound like? Yep, it is implied that she is one of the others, or in the show terms, a White Walker. He declared himself king, ruled from the Night Fort, her as his queen, and committed messed up things. A Stark king, a king beyond the wall. Eventually defeated him. His name was erased from all the records, or as the story goes. And that's that. And the show is nowhere near close enough to be making heads or tails of who's going to become king, because like I said, my man still got several books to write and he's not getting any younger, neither am I. So that was the answer to that question. And that's the video, folks. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Leave me a comment if you like this type of video. Like I said, this was absolutely spur of the moment. I've been putting this video off since Friday night, I believe is when this conversation took place. Let me go double check. 5:20, and it is now 5:26. So yeah, I've been putting off this video for quite some time because I haven't had time to do it, and I didn't know if it was gonna make a good video or not. But as I was doing it, I had some fun with it. Like I said, it's easy questions that if you aren't making videos on the lore of it every single day, it's something that you might not know or might not know entirely. So there's that. Like I said, leave me a comment if you guys like this shit. If you like the video, hit the like button. If you dislike the video, listen carefully. Double tap the dislike button. That way, it lets me know that I did bad and I won't do it again. Share it if you want to share it. Subscribe if you want to subscribe. That's it. Everybody have a good rest of whatever day I release this. Peace.